I am Margareta Wahlstrom. I'm the Secretary, UN Secretary General Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction, and as such head of ISDR, which is not an agency that you have heard of before, but I hope you will remember it ever after this. We are an office in the Secretariat of United Nations. I have with me today, in fact, an outstanding panel of contributors that will discuss issues among them, present their perspectives. But I also know that we have a very important number of highly qualified personalities in the audience. So we would like to engage you in the discussion as soon as we have done the appropriate introductory comments here. We got 90 minutes and we would like this to be a highly interactive session. It is for your benefit that we are meeting here today. Before we go into the substance, I know it's a rule here to ask you to kindly turn off your cell phones or at least mute them in order for also the sound equipment to function well and that we all can hear each other well. So thank you very much for doing that. Let me first introduce our excellent panelists, and then we will do a short introduction to the substance. To my left here, we have Professor Iokibe, who is just last year was in fact appointed the chair of the Reconstruction Design Council in response to the Great Eastern Japan earthquake and tsunami. And as such, he is part of the cabinet office of the Japanese government. A very long, distinguished career in law, not least, but currently also the president of the National Defense Academy of Japan. Welcome, and thank you very much for coming to this session. We then have the Vice President of JICA, Mr. Kiyoshi Kodera, who has a very long and distinguished international career in banks, in the World Bank, now as a Vice President of JICA, and a very important experience and personality, in fact, in international development policy over many years. So welcome to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. To my far right, Mr. Vinod Thomas, who is currently the Director General of the Independent Evaluation Department of the Asian Development Bank, also coming previously from the World Bank Independent Evaluation Group, and as such, of course, have seen many of the consequences of lack of or successful risk management in the world. So we're very pleased that you are here today. Thank you very much for being with us. And finally, to my near right, Mr. Jay Collins is a Vice Chairman of Global Banking of the Citigroup Incorporated. In such a long career in working with governments on financing in many different aspects, and that's what we hope to draw on here, what you have learned, but also working very closely with international institutions, the banks, with the United Nations system, and as such I think you also understand a bit how the international collaboration on these risk issues function and what are the really emergent and important issues. Although we are talking about cities today, I would like to preempt any questions. Why aren't there any mayors with us? And in fact, we had two very important mayors on this panel early on, but for different reasons, regrettably, both of them have had to cancel their participation. But we will still do our very, very best to focus on urban issues also as they see them, of course. So why are we focusing on urban risk? Why is this so important today? I think, you know, you are here because in fact, you already know the answers. More than 50% of the world population in urban areas. Certainly more than 80% of the global GDP produced in urban areas. The growth of cities when it comes to population, and in fact, the population growth in the mega cities of the world is the fastest growing. Interestingly enough, as a personal comment, you may think that some of these mega cities are becoming more and more unlivable, but that doesn't seem to at all reduce the speed of growth of the mega cities. So if today we have, in the latest count by the world population statistics, 13 mega cities, in 2025 they are going to be a lot more, well over 20 if the current trend continue. And most of them will be in your part of the world, here in Asia. You already have the largest ones, and you will continue to have the largest ones and among the fastest growing ones. So there are many positive things, of course, about cities. That's generate economic growth. That's where you get education, culture, modern life. We all want to live in cities. But cities also generate faster than anything else risk. Future risk accumulates in cities because of the fast growth. And the way, if you look at global figures for risk accumulation where disaster happens, you know that countries are increasingly successful in saving lives. Overall, the mortality rate in disasters globally is going down. Slowly in most parts of the world, fastest in East Asia, but it is going down. What is not going down is the curve of economic losses. That just keeps increasing because of increasing exposure. Interestingly, vulnerabilities are decreasing because of all the investment made in development. Development is in fact the only sure way of building resilience. So why is exposure increasing? Just to give you 3 figures to orient yourself in the discussions that will follow today. In 30 plus years, from 1987 till a few years ago, the world population increased with 87%. During the same 30 years, the population increased in flood-prone river basins with 114%. And during the same 30 years, in cyclone-prone, typhoon-prone coastal areas with 194%. So that's where we increase our economic assets. That's where population lives. That's where most of the fast growth is happening. And that's where the accumulation of risk goes faster. In fact, we are dealing with global averages now, but between 2 to 15% of the annual GDP can be lost to disasters. And the higher figure tend to be, of course, with smaller countries, higher vulnerability and a smaller economy and more mono-industrial, so to say. But very large economies absorb some of these losses much better, not because they aren't significant, but the capacity to withstand that shock is better until now. I think we have 2 representatives from Japan here today. And just like the Indian Ocean tsunami was a dramatic paradigm shift for our thinking about disasters and what has to be done to mitigate and preempt. I believe for all of you, the last couple of years, 18 months in Asia, East Asia, has been the next paradigm shift. And that really needs to look at what are the challenges for huge urban conglomeration, for highly sophisticated economies that are totally interdependent with the world economy. No disaster is anymore an issue for a single country or a locality. It has an impact on the nation if it's local, on the region if it's national, and very often global. So from this perspective, what we would like to focus on today is From my perspective as working with disaster and prevention, I always have to ask myself, what are the constraints to do what seems too obviously to do? It's not that we don't all know the answers. What are the constraints that we need to focus on in order to move to a much more proactive and preventative and anticipatory approach to very fast accumulating risks?